This is Dr. Jason Remenick, CEO and founder of Thalamus, and you're listening to Thalamus Grand Rounds, the premier podcast built by graduate medical education for graduate medical education. Whether a program coordinator, program director, GME administrator, DIO, or applicant, join me and my guests as we discuss hot topics in innovation in the residency and fellowship recruitment process.
Welcome to another episode of Thalamus Grand Rounds. We're doing something a little different today. At the end of every episode, we like to ask our guests if there is a new hobby they have adopted during recent years as we've experienced quarantine and life changes overall. And we've gotten some really fascinating answers. Everyone has mentioned something different, and we wanted to share this because we love to celebrate the incredible individuals who work in GME. In my GME journey, I've met some very inspiring, passionate, and dynamic people, and I'm sure you all have as well. On this podcast, we talk about a lot of complex and sensitive issues about equity and major innovations we'd like to see happen in GME. But beyond that, we really enjoy speaking with all of you. We wanted to share a compilation of the answers our guests have shared about hobbies that bring them joy and enrich their lives outside of the GME grind. So please enjoy.
With me is Carey McDonald, MBA, who's the residency program manager at East Carolina University Department of OBGYN. And also with us today is Tim Burns, program administrator for the OBGYN residency program at the University of Vermont Medical Center. With the pandemic, I've really started taking over a lot of the cooking duties in my house and started to put together some pretty wacky dishes and knowing new cooking techniques. I made a steak in a cast iron skillet a few weeks ago, and it was the best steak I've ever had in my life. Still can't believe I made it. Almost set the house on fire and filled it up with smoke when using it. So learn how to use your tools before you start cooking with them. But is there anything you guys have done in the pandemic? Be that cooking your favorite dish or something else you picked up for over the last 18 months or so?
You go first, Carey.
Well, I have developed an obsession for Rothy's shoes. I have bought far too many pairs of those. And I bought a Peloton bike, which has also become an obsession.
I think it has to become an obsession if you commit to a Peloton bike. So it's great to hear.
All I've seen is the commercials, and they're too intense for me.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get off work today to go get on my Peloton. I love that thing. So there you go.
But I'm not going to be able to top that. But one of the things that I've gotten into cooking as well. And cooking and baking. It's really funny. My husband's cousin is a chef, and I was watching a documentary series on Canada, and my husband's from Newfoundland, and they were making this Newfoundland molasses raisin bread. And I was like, oh my God, it looks so good. I'm going to have to find a recipe. I was on her Instagram. She just made one yesterday. So I texted her. I'm like, you have to send me the recipe so we can make it this weekend. So it's always fun to come up with new recipes and try them. And I learned, you can try it. If it doesn't come out, it's still going to be fun.
Right, for sure. That sounds delicious. Yeah, if you want to ship one of those back into the States, we'd be happy to test it out for you. So, I
did a lot of cooking prior to the pandemic, and the pandemic made me lazy. So now I order one of those cooking kits that sends you 3 meals a week.
Oh, that's good. That's great too. Yeah, no, we have a 20-month-old, so the bedtime routine has been my wife puts him to bed and I cook dinner, and then we kind of shut down and turn off. So it's worked out well. With me is Dawn DeSantis, the division administrator for graduate medical education for the Department of Pediatrics at the University of Florida in Jacksonville.
Actually, I have started to love exercise again. I have never been a thin person, will never be a thin person. I'm Italian. I love my food. But when I was working from home, I found I could not just sit in that chair all day. I could not do it. When I was at work, I was always up. I was always moving. I was talking to this person. I was going here. I was going across the street. In my home, there's only so many times you can walk around the living room. So I learned to love exercise again, and it's became therapy to me. If I was on a meeting that was incredibly frustrating, I'd get off the meeting, I'd go in my room, I might do 10 minutes, but it was like, put on some music, I moved around, I felt so much better. So to me, that has been a godsend. I actually have lost a little weight, which if you had asked me at my age, I would have thought was impossible. But I'm loving that. Now that the weather's cooling off, I'm taking my pup here on hikes now. We're having a great
Aw.
time. So yes, exercise has been great for me.
I think it's a great answer because it kind of fits into the topic. It's holistic. It's giving you something else to do outside of work and the pandemic, and is making you in the same way that this is what we're trying to decide from applicants right now as well. So that's awesome. Yeah, I love asking that question because it just gives us an entire another perspective, kind of like the personal statement or otherwise. I'm joined today by Starla Pathak, who has nearly 3 decades of experience in GME. For 10 years, she has served as the manager of educational programs in the Department of Orthopedics at Tufts Medical Center, where she oversees both the orthopedic residency and hand fellowship programs.
I learned how to bake artesian bread by one of our French neighbors who they haven't been able to go home to France since before the lockdown. They've got young kids who we sort of have adopted, and I've got 3 golden retrievers, so I know when they're coming by my house on their way to school because the dogs go crazy. But the wife went to pastry school in France, and so she's taken me under her tutelage, and so I'm learning to make artesian bread, and she's going to teach me how to make French croissant. And so that's probably been my COVID activity.
That's awesome. That's very serious bread. My wife is French Canadian, and she keeps telling me that we need to go to France when the pandemic ends because I need to try all the pastries and baked goods. And so I'm very much looking forward to that. So
yeah, we had to like temper the bread because we could eat bread every day. And he's like, oh, you just wrap it up and then you slice it and put it in the toaster and you can have it for breakfast and then you can have it for dinner when you have. I'm like, that's an awful lot of bread. And I was making a lot of bread, and thankfully I'm back in the office, so I'm not making quite as much.
Well, that's good. So you've been tempering your bread expectations, and pun intended as a way to wrapping all of this up. Today we have as our guest Michelle Gonzalez, the graduate medical education internal medicine program coordinator for the Martin Luther King Jr. Community Hospital.
I would say, aside from fitness, like exercising, I learned to have a hobby in reading a lot of books more. So I know that may not be a hobby, but I tend to go to the thrift stores and look for books. I'm very old school. I like to find the hard-covered books and just read at least affirmations books, anything like self-motivating to fictional, non-fictional, just to keep my mind like in mental health well-being, in other words. And of course my health, it was one of them, especially because I was getting sick a lot, and I realized I needed to change my lifestyle. So just keeping myself healthy as much as possible before.
For sure. No, it's great. I love reading historic plays right around from the 1930s and 1940s, and particularly there's a lot of interesting themes in medicine. So I think there's a lot that can be certainly learned from old books overall.
Today I'm speaking with Lori Rodefeld, Director of Rural GME Development and Support for the Wisconsin Collaborative for Rural GME.
I actually have gotten into hiking. My husband's been a hiker for a long time, and I had never, really embraced it. And, it's something that, when you don't have as many options and things to do, taking up hiking has been really fun. So we have some good hiking here in Wisconsin, but we've also went up to northern Michigan. There's some amazing hiking there. And then we actually went out to Glacier National Park last summer, and that's probably my favorite place on earth. It's just amazing. But yeah, hiking has probably been my fun new hobby that I've acquired during the pandemic, and it's been a good one. really ties well with my love for rural, because these are all very rural areas.
I was gonna say the hobby ties in well with the rest of the podcast, so that works out great also.
Today I'm speaking with Kimberly Brown, who is the fellowship coordinator at the Department of Anesthesia at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston. Kimberly has been with Beth Israel Deaconess for 25 years, moving from UME to GME, and then from residency to the anesthesiology fellowships.
I have not adopted any new hobbies. I'm getting back to some old ones. Well, that's not true. I did get an Oculus Quest 2. So
nice.
I'm feeling Beat Saber. I'm doing a lot of Beat Saber and Synth Riders. I just downloaded the Lady Gaga music pack, so I've been all into that.
Awesome.
But I'm also going back to sewing. So I've been redoing my sewing room. I renovated my sewing room.
Oh, awesome. That's old hobbies are great too.
They are.
What have you been sewing recently?
I said I'm renovating my room. I literally have three boxes of fabric left to fold. I've been folding fabric since September. I'm down to 3 boxes though, but I do have a pattern, and I have 2 patterns actually I'm doing. So the first one is a winter coat, which I've had the outer fabric for, and I finally just got the lining fabric for it. The second is I'm gonna make my own mannequin. There's a company where you can sew your own so that it's your body type. You send them your measurements.
Wow.
So I'm working on that, yeah. And then I'm going to a Bridgerton ball based on a Netflix series in April with my sister. So I'm also making a Regency gown.
Oh my gosh. You're not messing around.
It's winter. That's when you sew.
Well, that's true. Winters in Boston are not messing around either. So, but that's awesome. That's I think the best answer we've had on this question.
As you can see, our guests have such diverse interests, and it's a pleasure to hear about how the GME community supports wellness and personal growth, which is absolutely crucial in the high-stakes work that we all do. Thanks for listening to this special episode, and until next time.